Avengers Infinity War is probably the most ambitious superhero movie ever made. Not only is it cramming in dozens of characters in one movie, it's asking audiences to follow along on a storyline that includes nearly 20 movies in total. Does it pay off? And more importantly, what does the future of the MCU look like after this film? The short answer is a huge, emphatic yes. This is one of the most entertaining, thrilling, emotional, well-made superhero movies out there. Not only does it succeed in balancing so many characters and giving us an incredible payoff, it takes creative risks with the so-called Marvel formula, elevating the film to new heights. The action sequences are awesome and breathtaking, and have a real emotional heft to them. And Thanos is an intimidating force of nature, something which the MCU has desperately needed for a long time, having to contend with forgettable villains in most of their films. I really can't elaborate any further for this review without going into describing the plot or venturing into spoiler territory, so if you're just looking for a recommendation on whether or not to see the film, absolutely go see it. We're now officially going into spoilers, so please only see the rest of the video if you've already seen the film. Spoilers will commence in 3, 2, and 1. It truly was amazing when Superman showed up at the end of the film. No, that didn't happen, but I wanted to make sure you didn't hear any spoilers. So now let's begin for real. This is your final spoiler warning. The film is essentially the beginning of the end. I know that the marketing materials have basically advertised this film as the end of the MCU as we know it, but it very clearly isn't, and never was supposed to be in the first place. The original title of the movie was Avengers Infinity War Part 1, and that is exactly what this is, a Part 1 to an overarching finale. It's a film that focuses on Thanos and on his quest to obtain every last Infinity Stone to fulfill his ultimate plan of extinguishing half the life on Earth, and pretty much every single other planet for that matter. But before we go into any of that, let's start by discussing the opening of the film. Essentially reducing Thor Ragnarok to a pointless side quest, Thanos and his minions raid Thor's massive ship containing all of Asgard's inhabitants and kill them all. And not only that, Thanos kills Loki. Loki has died, quote unquote, before, but this time it looks like it will be permanent. Without a doubt, however, his fight with Hulk is one of the highlights of the film for me. As those of you familiar with my channel know, I'm a huge fan of fight scenes, and this is a perfect example of how to execute one that is both brutal and memorable. You have these two colossally sized fighters in an enclosed area, an excellent setup for a fight. Hulk goes in with full strength and tries to pummel Thanos into submission, as he has done with every single other villain in the MCU, but then Thanos counterattacks in the most awesome way possible. He simply outskills him, delivering incredibly sick boxing combos full of jabs and crosses, deflecting Hulk's punches, and even throwing in a well-placed knee strike. Thanos defeats and effectively puts Hulk out of commission. Hulk is teleported to safety shortly thereafter, but this is a pivotal scene. My brother and I agree that this is essentially a huge part of why Hulk refuses to appear again for the rest of the film. He was beaten. Not only that, he was humiliated. Hulk, that is Bruce Banner's alter ego, thrives on rage and aggression and anger. So imagine how that being feels when all his power is reduced to nothing in mere seconds. Hulk doesn't see it in more complex terms. The only thing he sees is being ruthlessly and decisively beaten. It's no wonder why he refuses to manifest himself again. This opening sequence sets a tone for the film extremely well, setting up how there will be real consequences with emotional heft as the film continues on. It's an amazing sequence and probably the best opening to the film I could think of. What the film does excessively well is not fall into the trap that the first Avengers did. In that film, after a great opening and setup, we essentially spend the entire movie inside the helicarrier until we quite literally explode out of it and right into the third act in New York City. It felt extremely claustrophobic to me, and still does. Don't get me wrong, it was great to watch them banter with classic Joss Whedon dialogue, but watching them fight each other in confined spaces isn't that thrilling in repeat viewings. But this film does away with all that. It moves on from set piece to set piece and comes up with excellent scenarios and missions for each group of characters to partake in. Doctor Strange, Iron Man, and Spider-Man devise a way to try to rid Thanos of his gauntlet. Gamora and Thanos go off to obtain the Soul Stone. Black Panther and his army try to stop Thanos' minions from reaching his sister, while she tries to safely pry one of the Infinity Stones from Vision's head. As a matter of fact, Infinity War has a great brisk pace, and I never felt we lingered too long on a dramatic scene or rushed through an action sequence. In screenplay structure, the third act is when the stakes are at their highest and everything comes together, but in so many ways, the film itself, despite being part one of its own storyline, felt like an extended third act, which is fantastic. What I enjoyed from the film as well is its sense of humor. I need to be specific here though. I don't particularly enjoy it in superhero movies when they rely too much on the laughs to carry the film forward, or even worse, use the one-liners to completely deflate any tension in the fight. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 are probably the most heinous offenders, and Civil War did tend to rely on humor quite a bit during the airport fight, taking away some of the tension of the film. However, the Russo brothers have decided to let the drama sell on its own for Infinity War, and did not rely on laughs to move the scene along. For example, Gamora's death doesn't suddenly cut to Red Skull saying, "I was totally joking, bro! Got the Soul Stone right here!" and just let it play on its own. But when levity is appropriate, such as when they find Thor and they're all admiring him, or when Thor calls Rocket Rabbit instead, they use it to its full potential. The wisecracks in the Wakanda battle are also really quite funny, but note that they don't joke during Thanos' last stand. This is one of the major ways that this MCU film differs from the others. They let their scenes stand on their own and don't always rely on humor. An interesting note here about these dark and mature storytelling sequences in Avengers is that it's precisely what DC was trying to do, albeit unsuccessfully, with Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. Don't get me wrong, I really liked Batman vs Superman for what it was. The problem with that tone was that it went all in on making everything dark and sailed right past the point of comfort for general audiences. Darkness can only be effective if there is light, and vice versa. There was hardly any light in Man of Steel or Batman vs Superman. It was also perpetually depressing, dark, and somber. And then Justice League did a drastic 180 and ended up making things worse. But I'm getting way off topic here, and if you'd like an in-depth analysis on Justice League, please check out my video review. Returning to Avengers, the action scenes were really well executed, and it was so cool to see these different characters interact with one another for the first time. From the grand battle scene in Wakanda to the more close quarters ones, each one felt fresh and never repetitive with really fun fight choreography. A huge standout fight for me was Iron Man vs Thanos. We haven't really gotten to see Iron Man engage in close quarters combat for quite some time, and yes, I do know he fought in Civil War, but it was mostly projectile based and a series of quick counters ending Cap, so it was really fantastic to see him deliver super powered roundhouse kicks and uppercuts to Thanos and use all his new gadgets on him as well. As a tiny aside, I think it's a little silly now that Black Panther, Star-Lord, Iron Man, and Spider-Man all have the exact same helmet removal technology, which looks suspiciously like a digitized symbiote effect. I much prefer a physical removal of a helmet or a more bulky mechanical one, like it used to be in the earlier Iron Man films. This effect reminds me a little too much of the awful transformations in Age of Extinction where the Transformers just materialize into whatever the heck they want to be. And now let's talk about death. Why did people die in this movie? Gamora gets thrown into a chasm, Loki gets the life choked out of him, Vision gets his Infinity Stone ripped right from his forehead while he was still alive, and several of our heroes vaporize into thin air. Without a doubt, however, the most painfully effective death scene was Spider-Man's. Peter instantly clinging to Iron Man, his makeshift mentor and dad, and pleading for his life, pleading to not die, definitely brought a tear to my eye. This was an intense and emotional moment and really resonated, perhaps more than any other dematerializing death. I was actually quite shocked that they went through with the major plot point from the comics and that half the people on the planet disappear overnight. So while I was kind of expecting it to happen, I had no idea they were reserving that for the climax of the film, and I had no idea they would make such an effective emotional spectacle of it. What ends up happening is that they essentially removed many of those closest to our core Avengers cast. Captain America has lost Falcon and Winter Soldier, Iron Man has lost Spider-Man, Rocket has lost Groot once again, etc., etc. All who remain are the core Avengers cast, excluding Hawkeye perhaps, we're not sure. War Machine, Nebula, and Rocket Raccoon have also survived. It really was a powerful way to end the movie with Captain America simply exclaiming, "Oh God," as he realizes what has happened, and then cutting to Thanos sitting alone in his happy place, smiling. In a way, this is even darker than the ending of Empire Strikes Back, which was also a huge downer as well, but at least that one ended on a hopeful note, with Luke getting his hand repaired. This one ends with them being completely and totally defeated. But therein lies the biggest deviation from the Marvel formula. Evil was not vanquished in a couple minutes. This is a true war for our heroes, and one which will require them to do something special to be able to defeat Thanos. A great moment in that final standoff with Thanos happens with Captain America, which I'd like to highlight. Though Cap doesn't have much to say in this film, and he spends most of the time speaking with his fists, and a push kick by the way, I hope all you guys saw it, he has a really unique moment with Thanos. There goes Thanos barreling down the last of the Avengers, defeating all of them in mere seconds, until he comes across Cap. Cap bears the weight of one of his attacks and desperately tries to hold him off. And here's where Thanos looks down on him, and you could tell by his expression that he is perplexed by just how this man is holding him off with nothing but pure will. Cap is strong obviously, but nowhere near as strong as Thanos. So he does take a second to admire him, before also defeating him with zero effort. Awesome stuff. As a fan of Captain America, I do wish he had a little more to do in the film, but this is a minor complaint, and I do realize that he just got a mini Avengers of his own with the Civil War. Something I like to point out too before moving on to analyzing the future of the MCU is how Star-Lord is most directly responsible for ending a potential way to defeating, or at least slowing down Thanos. Because of his little temper tantrum, Thanos managed to break free of the mind control spell and snatch the gauntlet back from Spider-Man, who had successfully managed to pull it from his hand. This would have been a major blow to Thanos, as Spider-Man could have tossed it to Strange, who could have instantly warped it to some godforsaken dimension. But no, Star-Lord just had to pout about Gamora and indirectly cause half the Marvel Universe to die, including Nick Fury. However, Fury effectively summons Captain Marvel and his little beeper as it looks like she is set to become the Superman of the MCU, ridiculously OP and able to solve virtually any conflict with her power set. Or put another way, she may very well be the Adam Warlock character from the comics, the character that can go toe-to-toe with Thanos. She may even wield the Infinity Gauntlet herself. So what does the future of the MCU hold for us? It's a little silly to discuss it from a financial standpoint as audiences are showing no signs of superhero fatigue, at least when it comes to Marvel films, and the movie just had the biggest opening weekend worldwide of all time. But from a creative standpoint, what can we expect? The movies that are slated to premiere before Avengers Infinity War Part 2, as it used to be called, are Ant-Man and the Wasp along with Captain Marvel. Ant-Man is once again in the precarious position of occurring right after a major Avengers movie, and this time is even more mind-boggling since we're dealing with a world in which half the superheroes and people are gone. I'm assuming the film will address this in some way, or it could take the easy way out and occur before Avengers Infinity War. By the looks of the trailers that have been released, it looks like that is the exact route they're going to take. In the first trailer, they're talking about Civil War as if it just happened and that was a major event. In a sense, I guess they really couldn't make it take place after Infinity War, since the events are too damn shocking and earth-shattering that a fun little action movie starring everyone's favorite side shifter wouldn't quite work. The tone would have to be much more serious and not jokey, which wouldn't suit Ant-Man's character at all, or play to Paul Rudd's strengths either. Captain Marvel also has a huge benefit of taking place in the past, being set in the 90s. From what we can gather from the end credits sequence with Sam Jackson, this is probably going to be the story of how she came to know him. In other words, it does not have to deal with the consequences of Infinity War. The film will thus serve to establish her power set in the universe, and as Kevin Feige has outright stated, make her the most powerful character in the MCU, dwarfing Hulk and Thor in the process. And from what we've seen in Avengers Infinity War, they really need her on their side to defeat Thanos. Or just have Thor aim a whole lot better next time and go for his arm or neck as opposed to the middle of his chest. I'm actually more excited for Captain Marvel than Ant-Man, as I don't know much about her character aside from what I've seen in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. She can fly, and she can go Super Saiyan by the looks of it, so it will be fun to learn more about her character. Who knows, maybe the film will be like Wonder Woman, and frame itself as a large flashback, have the beginning take place right after Infinity War, then the main movie happens, and then wrap it up with her going out of hiding, or whatever she's doing, to join the battle against Thanos. As to the course of Infinity War Part 2, it will obviously be about how the A-Team in the Avengers, i.e. Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, and Black Widow, will conquer Thanos and save the world, without a doubt then leaving or sacrificing themselves so that the B-Team, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, etc., can take over the MCU. I believe leaving Gamora's sister Nebula alive was an extremely deliberate decision, and one which will play a vital role in the next Avengers. In the comics, she plays a really important part in the storyline. What may also come into play, and this is far less likely, but I'll throw it in here just for fun, Captain America and Iron Man have now both had a chance to analyze and fight their opponent, Thanos. They're both excellent in reading their attackers and counterattacking based on their techniques, as shown in Civil War, so this could make a brief reappearance again. Iron Man could potentially read Thanos' attack pattern if he is stripped of the gauntlet to go in for the kill. Cap could do so as well. A part of me also thinks that Iron Man will have a kid with Pepper Potts, and this kid will be the next Iron Man. The biggest weakness of this amazing ending in Part 1 is that Marvel is very clearly going to hit the reset button as soon as Infinity War Part 2 ends. And I don't mean they're going to reboot the universe, which actually wouldn't be a bad idea in my opinion, as you can take on fresh interpretations of the characters and go in directions you hadn't gone before. They're going to hit the reset button in the same way Dragon Ball Z did every time the villain vanquished the population of the planet. Gather the Dragon Balls, release the dragon, ask him to revive everybody, and Bob's your uncle, everything is back to normal. And we know that this is the exact same thing that is going to happen at the end of Infinity War Part 2, because we already know Guardians 3 is being worked on along with Spider-Man 2 and Black Panther 2. Sebastian Stan, the actor who plays Winter Soldier, has a contract for 9 Marvel films. Notice that these guys are all supposedly dead now, but apparently not for long. They are going to do something which causes people to revive. And therein lies the danger of introducing your movie slate or letting contract info get out. The stakes are gone because you know these people are going to make it. So many of those have vanished, if not all of them, will be coming back, which makes their death a little cheap to be honest, and not as impactful as I'd like it to be. Make death permanent in these movies, and so gives it tension and stakes. If death is always reversible, it just won't be that impactful. I mean, even Agent Coulson didn't officially die in Avengers, as they have made abundantly clear in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And the even bigger question now is what will happen in the next phase. How can you go bigger than Thanos? The Russo brothers have hinted that they'd like to do Secret Wars, but the X-Men and the Fantastic Four are key to that storyline. Therefore, the Phase 4 slate may very well be rebooting those series, because there's no way that they're keeping the most recent Fantastic Four team alive. If not, Killmonger is also Johnny Storm. and I doubt they want to muddle the timeline by saying all the X-Men films somehow take place within their universe now. That being said, it would be a dream come true to see Hugh Jackman reprise his role as Wolverine. Logan was a heartbreaking goodbye, but I want to see him one last time with his full strength. Actors from the MCU have hinted that this very well may be a possibility, and Hugh himself has expressed interest in appearing in the MCU several times, so let's hope we can finally see this happen. The other option is to go small. In other words, have the future MCU titles be much more focused around their individual characters with much smaller stakes and not be building towards some grand confrontation, as I can't imagine you can get grander than Infinity War Part 2 with Thanos. Sure, there are quite a few galactic larger-than-life enemies in the Marvel Universe, but at that point, the human scale is so lost, I don't think anyone except the diehard fans will be interested in seeing the continuing adventures of Marvel's heroes. Another alternative is to let the universe take a break for a few years. It really has worked wonders for other franchises. The Jurassic Park franchise took a gigantic 14-year break and returned with $1 billion plus worldwide box office take. The Batman franchise took an 8-year break between Batman and Robin and Batman Begins and also did tremendously well. That was a springboard for a financially and critically successful trilogy. James Bond took a 6-year break between License to Kill and GoldenEye and successfully recreated James Bond with Pierce Brosnan and took in a gigantic box office take. And this is from a series that had been releasing an installment virtually every year or 2 years. Spider-Man is an excellent example of what happens when you don't take a break from the franchise. No installment after Spider-Man 3 has made more money worldwide, not Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2 and not Spider-Man Homecoming. Despite the heaps of critical praise, not enough audiences went to go see it. You need to give these characters, these franchises, some time to breathe. Get the audiences excited to see their favorite characters again by taking them away for a while. The examples are endless, and I'm sure it will work wonders for Marvel as well. And those are my thoughts on Avengers Infinity War and the future of the MCU. What do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments below, and see you next time.